Hello world, Liu here, and this is the second checkpoint of the Python from 0 to 1 series. This video will contain 5 Python questions for you to practice the stuff that you have learned in the past few videos, and do take some time to give them a go before looking at the answers and explanations at the second half of this video. So here, write a function or even that takes in a number n and returns the following strings depending on n. So here, if n is an odd number such as 5, we'll return the string 5 is an odd number. But if n is even, we'll return 6 is an even number. However, if n is not even an integer, we'll simply return n is not an integer. Number 2, write a function larger that takes in two numbers a and b and returns the larger number. So here, if larger takes in 3 and 6, we'll return the larger number, which happens to be 6. And here, if larger takes in 6 and 3, we'll still return the larger number, which is still 6. And here, if larger takes in two of the same numbers, one of them will be returned. Number 3, write a function, longer string, that takes in two strings a and b and returns the longer string. So the longer string here is the string that has more characters. Let's say we pass both apple and orange into longer string, and here apple has 5 characters, but orange has 6 characters. So here orange is the longer string and we hence return orange. So similarly here, we have orange and apple flip. However, orange is still the longer string having 6 characters, and therefore we still return orange. Here in the third example, we pass in pineapple and orange, and pineapple is the longer string as it has more characters, and therefore we return pineapple. And number 4, write a function, getGrade, that takes in a student's score and returns a grade. So if the student scored 90 and above, he'll get an A. And if he scored from 81 to 90, he'll get a B. If he scored from 71 to 80, he'll get a C. If he scored from 61 to 70, he'll get a D. And if he scored 51 to 60, he'll get an E. And lastly, if he scored 50 or below, he'll get an F. Number 5, write a function, largest, that takes in 3 numbers, a, b, and c, and returns the largest number. Try to make use of the larger ab function that you wrote in question 2. So here, to start off, let's define odd or even. So def odd or even. And here we pass in an n, colon, and here we start writing our function body. So here, the first thing we need to check is whether our n is an integer. Because if it is not an integer, we have to state that it is not an integer. So here, if the type of n is not equals to int, which is integer, we simply return string of n plus space is not an integer. And next, we need to check whether n is an odd number. So the way to check this is to use the modulo operator. So else if n modulo 2 is equals to 1. So once again, the modulo operator will get the remainder when n is divided by 2. So here, odd numbers when divided by 2 will give us a remainder of 1. And that is how we know they are odd numbers. And thus, we return stir n plus string, and here we have a space, is an odd number. And here for integers, if it's not an odd number, it is an even number. So here we can safely use the else block. And similarly, we return stir n plus is an even number. So now let's test our functions. And let's run this, and we'll get 5 is an odd number, 6 is an even number, and 3.14 is not an integer. So for the larger function, let's first define larger, and it takes in a and b. And similarly, we add a colon here, and now we can start writing the function body. So here, we assume both a and b are numbers. And since we want to return the larger number, we have to compare a and b. So if A is larger than B, we return A, else we return B. So let's check if our function works. And if we run this, we'll get 6, 6 and 7, which is correct. However, I can choose to write my function like this. I can actually remove the else block. And this is because nothing will happen after a return statement. So here, if this evaluates to false, which means that A is not larger than B, nothing happens here, and we simply return B. And if we run this again, we'll get the same result. So for question 3, let's define longer string, and it takes in A and B, which are both strings. And similarly, we add a colon and start writing our function body. So here, we want to return the longer string, meaning that we first need to compare the lengths of the strings. So here, let's use this to test. And here, we use the len function to find the length of both A and B. So let's just print the length first, A and length of B. And so if we run this, we'll get 5 and 6. None is printed because our function does not return anything, but ignore it for now. So here, the length of A is 5 and the length of B is 6. So now, in order to find the longer string, we need to compare both lengths. So if length of A is more than length of B, we return A. And similarly, we can do something like this. However, remember that the else is not absolutely necessary here, because nothing happens after the return statement, meaning that we can carry off the else and this will still work. So here, let's test this on all of the test cases. And if we run this, we'll get orange, orange, pineapple, which is correct. So for question 4, let's first define the getGrade function, and it takes in a score. So here, it takes in a score and returns a grade. And we have to do all of these checks, meaning that we need to have multiple if, and else loops. So here, if score is more than equals to 91, we return A. And next, we have to check whether the score ranges from 81 to 90. So else if score is more than equals to 81, we return B. So here, notice that I did not check whether the score is 90 or below. And this is because I've already made a check here. So here, if the score is 91 and above, the grade is A, and we do not need to check whether the score is 81 to 90 because this is impossible. So similarly, else if score is more than equals to 71, we return C. And else if score is more than equals to 61, we return D. And else if score is more than equals to 51, we return E. And finally, we have else, and we return F. So let's test this. Print getGrade. So let's say 99, and we should get an A. And here we have it, we have an A. And next, let's say we have a 82. And now we should get a B, correct? So let's say 72, and we should get a C, and we do 62, and we should get a D. 62, and we should get a D. And that's correct. 52, and we should get an E, correct? And lastly, 42, and we should get an F. And this is correct too. And now, for the fifth and final question, we want to write largest that takes in 3 numbers and returns the largest number. So let's do that first. Largest, A, B, and C. So here, the hint is that we can make use of the larger AB function that we wrote in Q2. So let's actually copy that first. So here, what we are going to do is, let's check the larger value of A and B. So we ignore C first. So let's do this. We print larger A and B. So here, notice that we are using the larger function inside the largest function. So let's check this with this. And if we run this, we will get 6. And this is true because we pass in 4 and 6, and the larger of 4 and 6 is going to be 6. However, if we switch this, 4, 5, and 6, we will get 5 instead. So here, let's assign the larger of A and B. So larger of A and B is equals to the larger of A and B. So here, this variable here is the larger number between A and B, whichever order they are. And next, we can return the larger of this thing over here and C. And if we test on all of this, we will still get 6 in all cases. So what's happening is we use the larger function on A and B first, and we assign the return value to some other variable. And this variable will definitely be the larger number between A and B, and therefore we can put it in a larger function once again and compare it with C in order to find the largest between the three numbers. However, one way to actually improve on this function is that we do not necessarily need to create a new variable. So we simply take this and put it here. And let's get rid of this. And once again, if I run this, I'll get the same output. So thanks for watching, and hopefully this was clear and easy to understand. See you in the next one.